She stood frozen in the narrow hallway just outside the restaurant bathroom, her hand gripping the wall to steady herself. Through the thin partition, she could hear them laughing, that high-pitched, carefree laughter that made her stomach turn. And then she heard the voice. That woman from her husband's office, the one who always smiled too brightly at company events, the one whose name kept appearing in his text messages at odd hours. Rachel's voice cut through the noise like a knife. "If only she knew," Rachel said, her words dripping with something that sounded like pity mixed with contempt. "He deserves someone better than her, someone who actually understands him." The wife felt her knees buckle. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears, drowning out the ambient restaurant noise around her. This was it. The confirmation she'd been dreading for months. Her husband was cheating, and his mistress was in there, right now, discussing her like she was yesterday's trash. But what Rachel said next would shatter everything she thought she knew. And the truth was far more complicated than betrayal. Her name was Jessica Harper, 37 years old, married to Daniel Harper for 12 years, and for the past 6 months, she'd watched her marriage crumble in slow motion, like a building collapsing floor by floor, until there was nothing left but rubble and the faint memory of what used to be. It hadn't always been like this. There was a time when Daniel would come home and the first thing he'd do was find her, pull her into his arms, and ask about her day like he genuinely cared about every detail. There was a time when they'd stay up late talking about their dreams, about the life they were building together, about the family they wanted to create. But that time felt like a lifetime ago. Now, Daniel came home late most nights. When he did arrive, he was exhausted, distant, preoccupied. His phone was always in his hand, always locked, always buzzing with messages he'd read with a furrowed brow before quickly putting it away. When Jessica asked him what was wrong, he'd say, "Nothing, just work stress." When she asked him why he was pulling away, he'd say, "I'm not. You're imagining things." But she wasn't imagining things. She knew her husband, and she knew when something was wrong. The arguments started small. Tiny disagreements that would have been nothing a year ago suddenly became explosive fights that left them both angry and hurt. He'd forget important dates. She'd accuse him of not caring. He'd snap that she was being unreasonable. She'd cry and ask why he didn't love her anymore, and he'd walk away without answering. 3 weeks ago, Jessica had done something she never thought she'd do. She'd printed out divorce papers. They sat in a manila folder on her desk at home, half filled out, waiting for her to find the courage to finish them. She hadn't told Daniel yet, hadn't told anyone, but she knew their marriage was over. And tonight, standing in that restaurant hallway, overhearing Rachel talk about her husband like she had some kind of claim to him, Jessica felt the final piece of her heart break. She'd come to this restaurant alone, needing to get out of the house, needing to clear her head, and of all the places in the city, Rachel and her friends had chosen the same one. It felt like the universe was mocking her, forcing her to confront the reality she'd been avoiding. Jessica moved closer to the bathroom door, her breath shallow. She knew she shouldn't be listening, knew it would only hurt more. But she couldn't stop herself. She needed to know, needed to hear it confirmed, so she could finally let go. Rachel was still talking, her voice animated, excited even. "I mean, she has no idea what he's been dealing with. None. If she did, maybe she'd actually support him instead of making everything harder." One of Rachel's friends laughed. "So what are you going to do? Are you going to tell her?" There was a pause. Then Rachel said something that made Jessica's blood run cold. "If she leaves him, I'll finally expose what he did. She deserves to know the truth, even if it destroys him." Jessica's hand flew to her mouth. Expose what he did? What had Daniel done? Was it worse than cheating? Had he done something illegal? Something dangerous? Her mind raced through possibilities, each one more terrifying than the last. She wanted to burst through that door and demand answers, but her feet wouldn't move. She just stood there, trembling, as Rachel continued. "He doesn't even know I found the file. And honestly, if she walks away now, the truth dies with her. But I can't let that happen. She needs to know what kind of man she's married to." Jessica felt tears streaming down her face. What file? What truth? She pulled out her phone with shaking hands and typed a message to Daniel. "We need to talk. Tonight. Don't make excuses." She didn't wait for a response. She turned and walked out of that restaurant as fast as she could, her vision blurred by tears, her chest tight with panic and rage and heartbreak, all mixed together in a toxic cocktail she could barely swallow. By the time she got to her car, she was sobbing, great, heaving sobs that made her whole body shake. She gripped the steering wheel and tried to breathe, tried to calm down, but all she could think about was Rachel's voice. If she leaves him, I'll finally expose what he did. What had her husband done? And why was Rachel threatening to expose him? Was this about the affair, or was it something else entirely? Jessica didn't know, but she was about to find out. Because tonight, one way or another, Daniel was going to tell her the truth, even if it killed their marriage for good. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Jessica sat in her car for 20 minutes, trying to compose herself, trying to figure out what to do next. She could go home and wait for Daniel, confront him the moment he walked through the door. But what if he lied? What if he denied everything like he'd been doing for months? She needed more information, needed to understand what Rachel knew. So she made a decision. She was going to follow Rachel and her friends, see where they went, see if she could overhear more. It felt invasive, desperate even, but Jessica was past caring. Her marriage was on the line. Her entire life was unraveling. She had a right to know what was happening. She waited until Rachel and her two friends walked out of the restaurant, laughing and chatting like they didn't have a care in the world. Jessica started her car and followed them at a distance, keeping a few cars between them so they wouldn't notice. They drove to a bar across town, one of those trendy places with dim lighting and overpriced cocktails. Jessica parked down the street and watched as they went inside. She waited a few minutes, then followed them in. The bar was crowded, which made it easy for Jessica to blend in. She ordered a drink she had no intention of finishing and positioned herself at a table near where Rachel and her friends had settled into a booth. She couldn't hear everything, but she caught fragments, enough to piece together bits of the puzzle. One of Rachel's friends, a woman with short red hair, leaned in and said, "So what exactly is in this file you found?" Rachel glanced around nervously, then lowered her voice. Jessica strained to hear. Transactions, a lot of them. Money moving from the company's charity fund into an account under a woman's name. At first, I thought it was embezzlement, but then I dug deeper and realized it wasn't that simple. Jessica's stomach dropped. Charity fund? Daniel worked for a non-profit. Was Rachel saying he'd stolen from the charity? That didn't make sense. Daniel was meticulous about ethics. He'd never do something like that, would he? The red-haired friend looked shocked. Wait, so he's been funneling charity money to some woman. Who is she? His mistress? Rachel shook her head quickly. No, that's what I thought at first too. But it's not like that. It's complicated. And that's why I haven't gone to the board yet, because if I do, it's going to destroy him. And honestly, I don't think his wife has any idea what's really going on. Jessica felt like she couldn't breathe. Complicated? What did that mean? Was Daniel stealing or not? And who was this woman receiving the money? Her mind was spinning. She wanted to march over to that booth and demand Rachel explain everything right now. But before she could move, Rachel said something that stopped her cold. He's been protecting someone, and if his wife divorces him now, before she knows the full story, she's going to regret it for the rest of her life. Protecting someone? Jessica's hands were shaking. She pulled out her phone and looked at the text she'd sent Daniel earlier. He still hadn't responded. Where was he? What was he doing? She needed answers, needed to understand what was happening. But sitting here listening to Rachel talk in riddles wasn't helping. She finished her drink in one gulp, left cash on the table, and walked out of the bar. As she stepped into the cool night air, her phone finally buzzed. A message from Daniel. "I'm home. Where are you?" Jessica stared at the screen. 3 simple words, but they felt loaded with everything unsaid between them. She typed back, "On my way. We need to talk. Now." When Jessica walked through the front door of their house 30 minutes later, Daniel was sitting on the couch, his head in his hands. He looked up when she entered, and the exhaustion on his face was startling. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past few months. Dark circles under his eyes, hollow cheeks, a tension in his jaw that suggested he'd been grinding his teeth. "Where were you?" he asked quietly. "Out," Jessica said, dropping her purse on the table. I needed to clear my head. Daniel nodded slowly. You said we need to talk. Jessica crossed her arms, trying to keep her voice steady. What did you do, Daniel? He blinked. What? I heard Rachel tonight. At a restaurant. She was talking about you. About some file she found. About money you've been moving. About exposing you. Jessica's voice was rising now, months of frustration and fear pouring out. What the hell is going on? Are you stealing from the charity? Are you having an affair? Are you involved in something illegal? Because I deserve to know. Daniel's face went pale. He stood up quickly, his hands raised like he was trying to calm her down. Jess, it's not what you think. Then what is it? She shouted. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my husband has been lying to me for months, sneaking around, hiding money, and now some woman from your office is threatening to expose you. So please, Daniel, enlighten me. What is it? Daniel ran his hands through his hair, pacing back and forth. He looked like a man on the edge of breaking. I can't tell you, he said finally. What? Jessica felt her heart stop. You can't tell me? Are you serious right now? It's not that I don't want to, Daniel said desperately. It's that I promised someone I wouldn't. I promised I would keep it secret, and if I break that promise, people could get hurt. Jessica laughed bitterly. People could get hurt. Daniel, I'm already hurt. Our marriage is falling apart. I have divorce papers sitting on my desk because I can't take this anymore. And you're standing here telling me you can't explain yourself because of some promise? Daniel's eyes widened. Divorce papers? Yes, Jessica shouted. Divorce papers. Because I can't live like this anymore. I can't keep wondering if you're cheating. I can't keep watching you pull away from me. I can't keep feeling like I'm losing you and not knowing why. Daniel looked like he'd been punched in the gut. He sank back down onto the couch, his face in his hands again. I'm not cheating on you, Jess. I swear on everything I love, I'm not cheating on you. Then what are you doing? She whispered. Daniel looked up at her, and for the first time in months, she saw tears in his eyes. Something I hoped you'd never have to know about. Something I did to protect you, and now it's all falling apart, and I don't know how to fix it. Jessica felt her anger deflate slightly. She sat down across from him, her voice softer now. Daniel, you're scaring me. Please, just tell me what's going on. Daniel shook his head. I can't. Not yet. But I need you to trust me. Just a little longer. Please. Jessica wanted to scream, wanted to shake him, but looking at his face, at the genuine pain and fear in his eyes, she realized something. Whatever he was hiding, it wasn't simple. And it wasn't about betraying her. It was about something else, something bigger. Ask Rachel, Daniel said quietly. She knows everything. If you want the truth, ask her. But Jess, he looked at her with such raw vulnerability it took her breath away. When you do find out, please remember that everything I did because I love you, even if it doesn't look like that right now. Jessica sat there, staring at her husband, the man she'd loved for 12 years, and realized she didn't know him anymore, or maybe she'd never really known him at all. And that thought was more terrifying than anything Rachel had said. Jessica didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed next to Daniel, listening to him breathe, staring at the ceiling, her mind running through every possible scenario. What could he be hiding that was so terrible he couldn't tell her? What had he promised someone? And why did Rachel know about it? By morning, Jessica had made a decision. She was going to find Rachel. She was going to demand the full truth. No more fragments, no more hints. She needed to know everything. She waited until Daniel left for work, then pulled up Rachel's information from the company directory. Rachel worked in the finance department, which made sense given she'd mentioned finding files and transactions. Jessica sent her an email. We need to talk. In person. Today. Please. 2 hours later, Rachel responded. Coffee shop. On 5th Street. Noon. Come alone. Jessica's hands were shaking as she read the message. This was it. She was finally going to get answers. At 11:45, Jessica walked into the coffee shop. It was a small place, quiet, with only a few customers scattered around. Rachel was already there, sitting at a corner table, looking nervous. Jessica ordered a coffee she didn't want and sat down across from her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rachel broke the silence. I'm guessing Daniel told you to come. Jessica nodded. He said, you know everything. So I'm here. Tell me. Rachel sighed deeply, like she'd been carrying a heavy weight for too long. Before I do, I need you to understand something. Your husband is not a bad man. He made a choice that most people wouldn't have the courage to make, and he did it because he loves you. Jessica's jaw tightened. Just tell me what's going on. Rachel pulled out her phone and opened a folder of screenshots. She slid the phone across the table. 6 months ago, I was going through the charity's financial records as part of an audit. That's my job. And I found irregularities. Money being transferred out of our fund into a personal account. At first, I thought it was embezzlement. I was going to report it immediately. But then I looked closer and realized the account belonged to a woman named Angela Torres. Jessica frowned. I don't know anyone by that name. I didn't either, Rachel said, so I did some digging. Angela Torres used to work for our charity 3 years ago. She left suddenly, no explanation. I found her on social media and reached out, and that's when I learned the truth. Rachel paused, her eyes searching Jessica's face. Angela was in an abusive relationship. Her ex-boyfriend was violent, controlling, dangerous. She tried to leave multiple times, but he always found her, always dragged her back. She was terrified. And one day, she came to work, covered in bruises. Your husband saw her, and he made a decision. Jessica felt her stomach twist. What kind of decision? He helped her disappear, Rachel said quietly. He used his connections to get her into a safe house. He helped her change her identity. He gave her money to start over somewhere far away where her ex couldn't find her, and he's been supporting her ever since, sending her money every month so she can stay hidden, so she can stay safe. Jessica stared at Rachel, trying to process what she was hearing. He's been sending charity money to help a woman escape an abusive relationship. Yes, Rachel said. Technically, it's illegal. He misused non-profit funds. If the board found out, he'd lose his job. He could face criminal charges. But he did it because Angela was going to die if someone didn't help her, and no one else was willing to take that risk. Jessica felt tears burning in her eyes. Why didn't he tell me? Rachel's expression softened. Because around the same time, you had that health scare. Remember? You were in the hospital for a week. The doctors weren't sure what was wrong. Daniel was terrified he was going to lose you, and he didn't want to add more stress, didn't want you worrying about his job or legal trouble or anything else. So he kept it secret. He carried it alone. Jessica felt like the ground had shifted beneath her. All this time, she'd thought Daniel was cheating, thought he was pulling away because he didn't love her anymore. But the truth was, he'd been protecting her, protecting Angela, sacrificing his own peace of mind to keep them both safe. But there's more, Rachel said, her voice dropping. Angela's ex-boyfriend found out where she was. I don't know how, but he did. And 2 weeks ago, he started threatening Daniel, told him that if he didn't give up Angela's location, he'd come after you. He'd hurt you to get to her. Jessica's blood went cold. What? Rachel nodded grimly. That's why Daniel has been so distant, so stressed. He's been trying to figure out how to protect both of you without putting either of you in danger, and he's been doing it alone because he didn't want you to be scared. Jessica put her head in her hands. Oh my God. Daniel, the money you saw in the transactions, Rachel continued, that wasn't just for Angela. Daniel was also working with a private security firm to make sure she stayed hidden and to make sure you stayed safe. Jessica looked up, tears streaming down her face. Why are you telling me this now? Rachel's eyes were filled with sympathy. Because I overheard you at the restaurant last night. I saw you listening, and I realized you thought Daniel was cheating. I realized you were planning to leave him, and I couldn't let that happen. Not when he's been sacrificing everything to protect the people he loves. Jessica felt like she couldn't breathe. She'd been so wrong, so completely, devastatingly wrong. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I have to go. I have to talk to him. Rachel caught her arm. Jessica, wait. There's one more thing you need to know. Jessica turned back, her heart pounding. What? Rachel's face was grave. Angela's ex was arrested 3 months ago. We thought it was over. Thought Daniel and Angela were finally safe. But he was released on bail 2 days ago. And according to the police, he's disappeared. They don't know where he is. Jessica felt her knees go weak. Are you saying he's coming after us? Rachel nodded slowly. I don't know. But Daniel does. And that's why he's been even more on edge lately. That's why he's been so secretive. He's trying to protect you from a threat you didn't even know existed. Jessica grabbed her purse and ran out of that coffee shop like her life depended on it. Because maybe it did. Jessica drove home faster than she should have, her mind racing. Everything made sense now. The late nights, the locked phone, the exhaustion, the distance. Daniel hadn't been cheating. He'd been fighting to keep Angela safe, fighting to keep Jessica safe, fighting to hold everything together while his world was falling apart. When she burst through the front door, Daniel was there. He must have come home early. He looked up in surprise. "Jess, what's wrong?" Jessica dropped her purse and walked straight to him, tears streaming down her face. "Why didn't you tell me?" Daniel's face crumpled. "Rachel told you." "Yes," Jessica said, her voice breaking. "She told me everything. About Angela, about the money, about the threats." "Daniel, why didn't you tell me?" Daniel's eyes filled with tears. "Because I didn't want you to be scared. I didn't want you to look over your shoulder every day wondering if some psychopath was going to hurt you because of something I did. I wanted to protect you from all of it. But I thought you were cheating," Jessica sobbed. "I thought you didn't love me anymore. I was going to divorce you." Daniel pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could barely breathe. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought keeping you in the dark would keep you safe. But all I did was push you away." They stood there for a long time, holding each other, crying together, releasing months of tension and fear and misunderstanding. Finally, Jessica pulled back and looked at her husband, really looked at him, and she saw the man she'd fallen in love with 12 years ago, the man who would risk everything to help someone in need, the man who would carry the weight of the world on his shoulders if it meant protecting the people he loved. "I need you to tell me everything," Jessica said. "No more secrets. No more protecting me from the truth. We're in this together. Do you understand?" Daniel nodded, wiping his eyes. "Okay, I'll tell you everything." And he did. He told her about the day he found Angela crying in the break room, her face bruised, her spirit broken. He told her about the decision he made to help her, knowing it could cost him his career. He told her about the months of secretly funneling money, arranging safe houses, working with organizations that helped abuse victims. He told her about the threats from Angela's ex, about the sleepless nights wondering if he'd made the right choice, about the guilt he felt for lying to Jessica even though he thought he was protecting her. And he told her about the file he'd hidden in his desk drawer, the one that contained everything: Angela's new identity, the location of the safe house, the evidence of the abuse, the communications with the security firm, everything. "I kept it hidden because if Angela's ex ever found it, he'd know exactly where to find her," Daniel explained. "But I also kept it because I knew someday I might need proof. Proof that I wasn't stealing for personal gain. Proof that I was trying to save a life." Jessica listened to all of it, her heart breaking and healing at the same time. When Daniel finished, she took his hands in hers. "You should have told me. I would have supported you. We could have faced this together." "I know that now," Daniel said softly. "But at the time, I was terrified. Terrified of losing my job. Terrified of putting you in danger. Terrified of everything. And I handled it badly. I see that now." Jessica squeezed his hands. "We're going to fix this. Together. We're going to make sure Angela stays safe. We're going to deal with this threat. And we're going to save our marriage. But no more secrets, Daniel. Not ever again." Daniel nodded, tears streaming down his face. "No more secrets, I promise." They held each other again, and for the first time in months, Jessica felt like maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. But then her phone buzzed. She pulled it out and looked at the screen. It was a message from an unknown number. Her blood went cold as she read the words, "I know where you live, and I know what your husband did. Tell him Angela can't hide forever. Neither can you." Jessica's hands started shaking. She showed Daniel the message, and she watched the color drain from his face. "He found us," Daniel whispered. Jessica felt fear wash over her, but she also felt something else: determination, anger, strength. She looked at her husband, the man she'd almost lost because of misunderstanding and secrets, and she made a decision. "Then we face him together," she said firmly. "We're not running. We're not hiding. We're going to the police right now. We're going to show them everything. The threats, the messages, the evidence, and we're going to make sure Angela is protected, and that we're protected." Daniel stared at her, and she saw something shift in his expression. Relief, gratitude, love. "Together," he said. Jessica nodded. "Together." They grabbed the file from Daniel's desk, got in the car, and drove to the police station. And as they walked through those doors, hand in hand, Jessica realized something important. Marriage wasn't about never having problems. It wasn't about perfect communication or always understanding each other. It was about choosing to stand together even when everything was falling apart. It was about fighting for each other even when it would be easier to walk away. And that's exactly what they were going to do. The police took Daniel and Jessica's statements seriously. They reviewed the messages, the evidence of Angela's abuse, the threats from her ex-boyfriend. Within hours, they'd issued a warrant for his arrest and assigned protective details to both Jessica and Angela. 2 days later, Angela's ex was arrested, trying to board a flight out of the country. He'd been planning to leave, but not before settling scores, according to the detective who interviewed him. The charges against him were extensive: stalking, harassment, violation of a restraining order, and attempted intimidation of witnesses. He wasn't going to see the outside of a prison cell for a very long time. As for Daniel, the charity board reviewed his case, and while what he'd done was technically illegal, they decided not to press charges. Instead, they worked with him to create a legitimate program to help abuse victims with proper oversight and legal funding. Daniel kept his job. More importantly, he kept his integrity. And Angela, she was finally, truly safe. She sent Jessica and Daniel a letter thanking them for everything they'd done. She'd started a new life, found a job she loved, and was finally free from the nightmare that had haunted her for years. She wrote, "You saved my life, and I will spend the rest of it making sure that was worth it." Jessica and Daniel went to counseling. They worked through the months of miscommunication and secrets. They learned how to be vulnerable with each other again, how to trust, how to rebuild. It wasn't easy. There were hard conversations. There were tears. There were moments when Jessica wondered if they could really come back from everything that had happened. But slowly, day by day, they did. They started having dinner together again, started talking about their days, started laughing at inside jokes, started holding hands on the couch while watching TV, started remembering why they'd fallen in love in the first place. 6 months after that terrifying night in the coffee shop, Jessica tore up the divorce papers. She did it ceremonially, with Daniel watching, and they both cried as the pieces fell into the trash. "I'm sorry I ever doubted you," Jessica said. Daniel shook his head. "I'm sorry I gave you reason to, but we're here now, and we're not going anywhere." Jessica smiled. "No, we're not." They renewed their vows on their 13th wedding anniversary. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, but it meant everything, because this time, they weren't promising to love each other when things were easy. They were promising to love each other when things were hard, when things were scary, when things were uncertain. They were promising to fight for each other, always. As Jessica stood there, looking into Daniel's eyes, saying those vows again, she thought about everything they'd been through, the misunderstandings, the fear, the secrets, the threats, and the ultimate truth that had saved them both. Sometimes the people we love make choices we don't understand. Sometimes they carry burdens we never see. Sometimes they protect us in ways that hurt us, but that doesn't mean they don't love us. Sometimes it means they love us so much they're willing to sacrifice their own peace for ours. And that's what Daniel had done. He'd sacrificed his peace, his transparency, his own well-being to protect 2 women who needed him. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't always right, but it came from a place of love, and in the end, that's what mattered. After the ceremony, Jessica and Daniel went home to the house they'd almost lost. They walked through the door together, and Jessica looked around at the space that had once felt so cold and empty. Now it felt warm again, safe again, like home. Daniel wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "I love you," he whispered. "I love you too," Jessica said, and she meant it, with everything she had. That night, as they lay in bed together, Jessica's phone buzzed one more time. She almost didn't look at it, but something made her pick it up. It was a message from an unknown number. Her heart stopped for a second, remembering the last time she'd received a message like this. But when she read it, she realized it wasn't a threat. It was a warning, and it was from Angela. The message read, "I just found out they're releasing him on appeal. His lawyers found a technicality. I don't know when, but he's getting out. I'm so sorry. Please be careful. Both of you." Jessica's hands started shaking. She showed the message to Daniel, and she watched his jaw tighten. "Again?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" Jessica didn't know. But what she did know was this. They'd faced this threat once before, and they'd survived. This time, they'd face it together, from the very beginning. No secrets, no distance, no misunderstandings. Just two people who loved each other, standing side by side against whatever came next. Jessica took Daniel's hand and squeezed it. "We'll deal with it," she said firmly. "Together." Daniel looked at her, and despite the fear in his eyes, he smiled. Together. And as they held each other in the darkness, Jessica realized something profound. Life was never going to be perfect. Threats would come, challenges would arise, misunderstandings would happen. But as long as they faced everything together, as long as they chose each other every single day, they would be okay. Because that's what love really was. Not the absence of problems, but the presence of partnership. The commitment to stand together no matter what. And that's exactly what they would do. This time, and every time after. Together. So let me ask you something. If you discovered your partner had been keeping a massive secret from you, even if it was to protect you, would you be able to forgive them? Or would the breach of trust be too much to overcome? And what about Daniel's choice to help Angela, knowing it could cost him everything? Was that heroic, or was it reckless? Think about the people in your life who carry burdens you can't see, the ones who make sacrifices you'll never know about, the ones who love you in ways that don't always make sense on the surface. Are you giving them grace? Are you asking the right questions? Or are you, like Jessica, making assumptions that might be destroying something beautiful? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to know how this story made you feel, and if you found yourself questioning your own relationships, if this made you think about trust and sacrifice, and what it really means to love someone through the hard times. Hit that like button and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because sometimes the most painful misunderstandings are the ones that come from love, and sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that almost didn't survive. Thank you for watching.